What's up, everyone? Beast Mode back here with another video. So today I have something very special. I have a good friend of mine, probably the most decorated Vayu player of the entire Edison format. In my opinion, I do believe he is the best Vayu player. Without further ado, we have 10-foot D is what we call him on stream and YouTube. So 10FD is here with us. Can you say hi to everybody, please?
What's up, everybody?
So the reason why we are interviewing him, well, there's a couple reasons why. Obviously, he's a really good player, but also he pretty much only plays Vayu. And people after the video I just posted, people are asking a lot of questions as to like certain card choices and what he feels is good or bad, and maybe his thoughts on the metagame. So he's nice enough to come join us on the channel here. I do plan to have some other collabs in the future, specifically with like Fraser Smith and Nerd Podcast. Obviously, check out his channel. He just gave me a shout out recently, which is great. And he does have great Edison content. So definitely check him out as well. Maybe do a collab with Cameron Saunders. We kind of talked about that in the future as well. So also, I just want to say 10FD, right? Is it? Or that's
I
the
think it's 10-foot D on YouTube, but
10
yeah,
foot
people
D.
know who I am.
That's right. 10-foot
I
D
didn't
on
want to make
YouTube.
the didn't want to make the channel get flagged right away. So
That's right. Keep it PG, but 10-foot D. He does have a YouTube channel. He's planning on making good content, and he's a great player. So I would definitely recommend subscribing to him already. And I will also obviously have that in the description so you guys can find his channel easily. So with that being said, could you just introduce yourself for everybody here who doesn't know you?
yeah, I'm a Edison player. I play a lot of Vayu Turbo. I have a lot of good tournament success. I think I'm the most decorated, so that's what we can clickbait. So that's why I'm here. So
I'd agree.
yeah, just here to answer some questions about the deck that I saw in Beast Mode's last video, and yeah, basically it.
Okay, so obviously, actually, 10-foot, we have great history together. He beat me in the finals of what, RBT5,
A while ago,
a
but yeah.
while ago, yes, and he's since
Yeah.
topped multiple tournaments since then. So let's see here. So first question that a lot of people were asking is, why don't you play Gores?
No gores.
Yes.
So with Vayu Turbo, you're almost always going to have field presence, right? So you have Vayu pitch Greffer, Vayu pitch Rocco. Let's see, a bunch of traps you can set, Raiko, Hamster, Caius, all sorts of different things that you're putting on the field. Basically, if you're, yeah, let's see, you always have field presence, and let's see, Gores conflicts with a lot of the deck's playstyle, so it's just not correct in my opinion. In hands where you brick, let's say all monsters, it's yeah.
Well, all brick monster hands are sometimes the most like deadly hands with this deck, though, too, right?
Yeah, yeah. At the same time, like Vayu's bricks, you can set Rocco, you can set Vayu, so it's never like a complete brick where you can't put anything on the field. Like two Caius, Dad, maybe I don't know what else, Brain Control, Heavy Storm. It's like those type of hands where you can't summon anything, put anything on the field is very uncommon. So
Very uncommon. Okay, and I know
yeah.
we've talked about it in the past too, and you have not changed your stance. Like Gores has still not made its way into this deck in the past year.
Yeah.
So
And other top players like James Ark, Spiral, they've also said this, the exact same thing where Gores does not belong in this deck. So
okay, so that answers that question, which is very common. Also, here we have what was the reasoning behind Spirit Reaper? Because you pretty much like pioneered the whole Reaper in the deck. I don't really think I've seen it prior to this or prior to your build.
oh yeah, absolutely not. So at first I had Sangen in this list, and I noticed that Sangen was almost always Shura food. I hated summoning it, and Necrogardener I didn't enjoy drawing. I don't want to summon or set Necrogardener. Pitching it with Greffer feels kind of meh. Very slow. It's a very slow draw. Basically, I wanted something defensive that I can use, and also something that could punish people playing around Raiko. Like so many times I put a T set on the field and they'll keep their prisons to keep their mirror force in hand, and I won't be able to pop anything. They just yeah, they just they just have me sit on the Raiko and I'm getting upset. So I wanted something to be able to punish that play. So Reaper was, slam dunk decision for me. Threw it into the list, and as soon as I saw it, or as soon as I put it in, I saw instant success. People doing that play would get constantly punished. People trying to use the Gores that I don't want to play. Reaper hard punishes Gores. You swing at them. Either they discard the Gores because they don't want to drop it for a 300 token, or they just drop it with a 300 token and it just dies to a prison or another Raiko later. So yeah, Reaper is fantastic.
I actually agree with Reaper. I think it's one of the best cards in this deck. Just the way
Yeah.
you play with it. I got destroyed in the finals. I think you hit two Caius out of my hand. I just couldn't play around it. And I think you literally, like, I did the exact thing you were saying. Like, did not play into the Raiko. I didn't have maybe a Goblin or a Sangan to float into it. And I just said,
Yeah.
pass. And the next thing you know, Spirit Reaper flips up and is ripping every card out of my hand. So I think I probably wouldn't play the deck without Spirit Reaper, honestly. I think it's that good in this deck.
Absolutely. And in the most recent BCS, I had some guy, summon a Spirit Reaper, rip two Kai's out of my hands, and I lost the match off that. So,
Did that happen in the finals?
yeah, in the finals
In
too.
the
It was
finals.
crazy.
Yeah, you guys, if you want to see the replay of actually first and second place was the exact deck list we're looking at here. It's on the stream. You can always replay the streams. They're all posted, so you can catch his finals match. Actually, we caught a few of his matches on stream. So, you kind of touch base on the Necrogarner. That's a common question too, because it just seems like Necrogarner should be in this deck because of the way the deck plays. But you feel it's kind of slow. I know you spoke a little bit. I don't know if you want to touch base
Yeah.
on that a little bit more.
Okay, so should be in the deck, I would disagree with. Basically, every card in your deck, you are going to draw, like, that's guaranteed, basically. When I draw Necrogarna, I am never happy. I never want to see it. And I feel like the only time Necrogarna is good is when you mill it. And that's not guaranteed. You're going to, draw it at times. It's going to clog up your normal summon. And if even people say, oh, what if you draw it with Greffer? Even drawing it with Greffer, I still don't like it because pitching Vayu Rocco, you have a complete set. You can make the monster right away.
Mm-hmm.
Pitching a Necrogarden with Greffer, and you're still missing half of the piece. You have to use a Greffer effect, again at some point, or an
True.
Arma effect. So it's yeah, I'd rather just draw a prison, honestly. So that's part of the reason I play 3 prison. If you're not playing 3 prison, then I would recommend playing 3 prison. But what was it? Raikoko's list I saw. He has 3 prison, Mirror Force, and Gardna. That's something that I would consider if you did want to play Gardna, because prison's just a better card to draw in general. But yeah, I just never want to draw it. Basically, is the reason.
And it makes sense too, because like if you're sending the Necrogana off of Greffer, and then you essentially like trying to keep Greffer alive, so you then just have to banish the Necrogana to do that. Sometimes it's just it doesn't really get you to where you need to go. So I understand what you're saying. That does make sense.
Yeah, it stalls a little bit, but it's yeah. I hate drawing it much more than I love milling it. So because of that, I just don't want to play it at all.
Makes sense. All right, next question. How come there's no return in this deck? I know for a fact I've seen Arc on return, and he is I believe he pioneered the deck in the current Edison format that we have here. He has moved on to return. It seems like you have not quite yet. So why is that?
Why is that? So I actually had somebody come into my DMs earlier this morning asking about return and how they dislike it. The main reason I dislike return a lot is because it is a brick whenever you open it, which will happen again, like I said, with Gardna. You open return, it's a complete brick. Your brick hands with like multiple values, let's say multiple Kias, multiple Rockos. You don't want to you don't want to draw a return with it. Like your hand is already bad enough. You need some sort of some real substance. Maybe something you can set like a Reaper, maybe like a prison or yeah. It's just a very slow card. It conflicts with oppression. It takes time to set up. And you're paying half of your life points. Oftentimes, you're only going to have like a Vayu Rocco banish. It's not like zombies where you have, Mizuki Plague and a whole bunch of combos that you can do afterwards, which makes it worth, the time investment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Vayu just doesn't have as fast banishing. And yeah, not as fast banishing. When you do flip it, it's not as impactful as, let's say, in zombies. So yeah, for how bad it is early game, it's definitely not worth it. If you can guarantee that you see it early or late game, like late game, it's fantastic. Wow, you put in 3 Rockos, 3 Vayus, you Black Rose, you nuke their field, pump, 10,000 damage. Like, wow, crazy, insane. But oftentimes games don't last that long. You're going to die to Hero Beat Black Wings within 2-3 turns, and you're not going to have much stuff banished. You're not going to have much stuff banished by that point. So it's
that does make sense. That does make sense. Like in zombies, it's a win condition, whereas in this deck, it feels like it would just be more like a win more.
Absolutely, yes. Win harder, and it doesn't help you when you're breaking. So not worth it in my book.
Alrighty, so that's another question we've knocked down here. I had a question here about why do you prefer the Vayu deck rather than the Blackwing hybrid deck? Can you maybe touch base on why you prefer to play that? I know they do play differently, obviously, but there's a lot of similarities between the two because they do, like the hybrid deck plays somewhat like this. So maybe you can touch base on that. There was a few questions regarding that,
Let's see. So the only similarity I would say with Hybrid Deck and Blackwing is that they both play Greffer. They both play 3 Vayu, 3 Rocco.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, I'm going to say that they're completely different.
They're different after that. Yep.
Yeah, because Vayu has Raiko, Hamster, Caius, Armageddon Knights, and Plague Synchros, whereas Blackwing has Kalut. Sure, that sort of thing. It's a different playstyle. Vayu is more control focused and then explodes, whereas Blackwing just wants to go for consistent jabs, I guess. So let's see. Part of the problem I have with the hybrid Blackwing deck is that it will often brick out of your mind. You're going to draw Greffers with Icarus, Greffers with Oppression, no Blackwings. Let's see, a bunch of Vayus, a bunch of Rockos, and you're not going to have the what do you call it? the way to unbrick the same way that as Vayu does. Like if I draw two Vayus and let's say, a hand of other bricks, I can draw into Armor later. I can draw into, Grepher plus something else to set up that. Or I guess Blackman can do that too. But basically, what am I trying to say? It's
Well,
you
it's
don't have as
easier to
good
put your
comments, I
cards in the
guess.
graveyard
Yeah,
with Raikou, and
yeah,
which the hybrid deck doesn't have. So like you said, when you hard draw those Vayus and the Sirocco's, if you can't play them, you're waiting on a Greffer, right? So I do
yeah,
think that's what you're trying to get at. Like you can unbrick hands a little bit easier here because the whole deck kind of flows a bit better in Vayu.
yeah.
And again, I'm answering for you, which I probably shouldn't be doing, but it feels
No,
like
no,
the
no.
deck flows better in Vayu, like the whole Sirocco Vayu engine, than it does in the hybrid build. But
Yeah.
again,
And another problem with Black Wings is that, like, let's say you're going second and opponent opens like set three, set one. You don't want to be summoning vanilla monsters into that, like, sure, Grapher, that sort of thing. Vayu, you can set your own cards, set your own back rows, and, you play back at that playstyle. You don't want to run, head first into something like Bottomless Trapple or, Prison, something like that.
yeah, and
So
it's set behind a
it's,
tempo.
yeah, it's Blackwing has a linear playstyle. Vayu has many different options, many different lines. You can play slow, you can play fast, you can play, resource control game. It's a lot more options with Vayu than hybrid Blackwing.
Okay. I will say, I'm just going to add a little tidbit here that when I watch you play the deck, I feel you play the deck far different than others. I notice a lot of people, obviously, you're a better player than a lot of players playing the game, but I notice a lot of players playing this deck specifically. They often just try to do the most aggressive plays. They disregard back rows as if Mirror Force and Torrential doesn't exist. You see them slam Greffer, use priority, boom, Vayu, make the armed wing play, swinging for the fences. Whereas when I watch you play, it's very methodical. It's set a Raikou, set a Hamster, set a D prison, play, flip, hit a back row. Maybe you don't make an armed wing. Maybe you do. It's very slow, control based. Where I just see other players playing extremely aggressive. Maybe you can talk on that point a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I see people do that all the time. They'll have a hand of like Hamster Caius and then Greffer Vayu, and they say, "Oh shoot, 4K open board." They swing into that and run into Gores and eat shit. It's yeah, you don't want to be you don't want to be doing that because this game or this deck is very very punishing if you make a misstep because you have so many lines because your deck has so many normal summons. You want to be playing precisely, and you also have to be respecting what can my opponent do, right? So in poker, there's like different levels of play. The first level of play is looking at your own cards. Oh, what do my cards do? The next level of play is, oh, what do I think my opponent has? What do my opponent's cards do? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So people right now, I feel like they're not thinking about what do my opponent's cards do. They are seeing back rows. They're seeing open fields where like zombies, for instance, they have a bunch of recruiters, a bunch of traps, and they say, oh, well, zombies leave an open board. I guess they completely bricked. Like, what's more likely? They completely bricked, or they have Trag, Gore, something like that to play back at you. So
Well, yeah, it's likely.
yeah, they're not thinking about what do my opponent's cards do and how what I put on the field can be answered. So I'm always thinking about what traps can my opponent set? How does putting Greffer on the field at some points like interrupt me? Like, do I lose a whole bunch of advantage if I eat XYZ trap? You try to do calculations, see what likelihood is, and you're evaluating all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that's that's how I'd play. I want to make sure that my plays go through rather than run into some sort of wall that is probably going to be there.
And I agree with that. I play similar. I play very slow, and sometimes I could OTK somebody 2 turns before with zombies. But the reality is, you have to figure out if they have Gores and I make this play, they're going to be able to reverse the whole board
Yeah.
around in their favor. And I think that really, just having that concept and that mentality separates top tier players from just mediocre or those players that are trying to take the next step, because I think they're so focused on the cards and what their cards do that
Yeah.
they
My
disregard what
cards too.
their opponent can do to you. So
Yeah.
I do agree with what you're saying there, and you watch a lot of players play and you just see them slam cards and they make the synchros because they know that slam
Yeah.
diva, slam goblin, zombie, because that matches up, right? That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that's not how it always is. And same thing with Vayu here. You see him just go Greffer into armed wing and it's 4,000, and then next turn it's like a severe punish. So
Yeah.
I do agree with that. I do play. I think you play the deck like no one else. Well, there's a couple top tier
Thank
players,
you.
but I do think that you play.
Sure.
I agree with the play style. Not that you need that, but I do like the way
Thank
you
you.
play.
Thank you.
So let's see here. I have a question myself for you. Why only one deck Devi in the side deck?
One deck Debbie. That was another question that somebody asked me about earlier this morning. So he was asking about Crow, Deck Devi, Oppression, and if you think about it, all of those cards hit the same deck. So let's say we're playing 3 Crow, 3 Deck Devi, and 2 Oppression, right? So what is that? 8 cards.
Sure. Yep.
If you're drawing a handful of your side cards, your hand is dead. Like you can't do anything with a bunch of crows, a bunch of oppression, a bunch of deck dev.
Hmm.
So deck dev is by itself because it's a horrible topic. You never want to see it when there's an established board. And you don't want to see it with other cards like let's say you brick with two Kayas, two Vayu, and let's say two oppression. You don't want hands like that, deck dev does not complement with, and you only want to see a certain number of your side cards. So deck dev pairs with oppression, so you have three side cards. You never want to see, deck dev and oppression when you don't have a live hand because that's no good. But
Hmm.
it's yeah, that's basically the card that ties into it. It pairs with oppression. Let's say I'm playing it with compulsory, so you don't want to see all your compulsories and then oppression and then deck dev on top of it. So you only want to see a little bit at a time. So deck dev falls into that category of cards, which is why I only play one.
We play one. So I actually I had that problem initially. I was over side decking for specifically the frog matchup. I didn't really understand how to play it initially, and as a zombie player, and I was side decking like 10 cards in, and then I ran into the problem that you just spoke, where I would draw like just side deck card after side deck card,
Yeah,
and then it almost comes to the point where you actually can't stop the deck anyway because you can't play because you just have
yeah,
too much
exactly.
side deck cards.
Your card is all anti-stop them, but you're not doing anything yourself. So
Yes.
they draw their cards and they run you over. So
Correct. So I do think now that the right number is somewhere between, 3 to 5 ish cards that you should be probably side decking in per matchup. Where five being maybe a matchup that you're not having a very, you're not very strong against. You should not probably be side decking 10 cards for a specific matchup. I think that is probably wrong.
well,
So,
as long as it's different cards, 10 of the same type of cards, like let's say it's 10 traps that do very similar things. Like for instance, compulsory and oppression. Like it hits it's an anti-special summon card, right?
yep. Yep.
If you're having 10 cards like all doing the same thing, that's bad. But versus frogs, I'm actually citing like 9 or 10 cards. I have Dyna, Kaiku, DDV, Rug. They all do different things. So it's like a diversified, what is it?
Portfolio.
Set of cards. Yeah, diversified portfolio, diversified set of cards that you're drawing. So as long as your cards are doing different things, then yeah, it's okay. But just have your cards, yeah.
That does well, and this deck has like an awful game one matchup against frogs. From what I've
Absolutely, yeah.
seen, it just it doesn't do enough. That's why I do see why you're trying to side deck so many cards against the frog matchup because I do think games 2 and 3, especially with deck devastation virus, that this deck is very strong against frogs.
Absolutely.
So I see why your side decking is heavy as you are. Um, and I do think, let's see here for questions. Someone asked about what's your thought on compulsory evacuation device in the main board. Do you think that's a possibility?
Absolutely, yes. I don't have the what do you call it? I don't feel comfortable enough with it versus the hero beat matchup. And sometimes Blackwing it can be dead when they're, running at you with Shurabora, but it can be live versus those cards. I did experiment with main deck compulsory at one point. I can definitely see myself cutting an oppression or a dust tornado for compulsory in the main deck. So it's a
Okay.
fantastic card. It comes in versus frogs, Vayu. It comes in versus zombies even. So yeah, it's very, very, very versatile. So
I agree. Actually, I will tell you, I'll give credit to you. We had a conversation probably before one of the RBTs. I don't remember what one, but you were saying how good. Actually, I think you might have been on stream. You had talked to everybody how good Compulse is against Vayu, and ever since then, I have loved this card in the sideboard, and it goes in against so many matchups. Vayu, it's great against
absolutely.
because, and you
Yeah.
had mentioned that you don't want to be sending the armed wings and the synchro guys from the graveyard back to the graveyard. You want them in the extra
Yeah.
deck.
Yeah,
So
Crow is problematic. It doesn't remove, an entire set compulsory. It kills an entire set. And guess what? It's also good versus Plague, which is what you primarily want to be crowing. So it's good versus the entire set of, Value plus Rocco, and it also hits Plague. So it's why would you not play this over Crow? So
Yeah, this card is really, and that's another point I want to make here. No Cyber Dragon and no DD Crow on the sideboard. Do you just want to touch base on that really quick?
no Cyber Dragon is because if you think about it, Cyber Dragon is a vanilla. And when you think about, what do my opponent's cards do? Like zombies, you got compulsory or not compulsory. What is it? Return from the different dimension, Bryonak, Mizuki, huge explosive plays. And I'm thinking about what card do I want to answer that? And Cyber Dragon is not high on the list. When I think about Whirlwind Shura, search something, and what do I want to answer that? Do I want Cyber Dragon? Probably not. I versus Vayu Turbo, I don't want it. It needs to be comboed with another card, which won't happen all the time. And yeah, it's basically just a vanilla. I'd rather have something else every time.
I see.
And also, you also have Sirocco in the deck. So 3 Sirocco and 2 Cyber Dragons would conflict with each other. So
That does make
that's why I
sense.
don't play Cyber Dragon. DD Crow, I started with 2. I slowly cut it to 1, and then now it's at 0. I just noticed that I'd rather have other cards like Deck Devastation or Compulsory. Like I said with Vayu, you don't want to be crowing, Vayu pieces. You don't crowing Plague is the best case scenario, but Compulsory can, it can also bounce the Plague. It does the exact same thing. It can even hit a live monster after the card gets summoned. Like if you draw Crow after they use their card, it's just, it's a dead card in your hand. You said it, okay, cool, 100 beat stick. Not very good, but as compulsory, you've seen me where I can even use it on, regular monsters, just interrupt their normal summon for a turn or bounce my own stuff to dodge a Brine control, soul exchange, enemy controller, that sort of thing. Tech Devastation Virus is a way more impactful DD Crow. You can, like you said, it's a blowout card. I'd
It
rather have
is.
that than DD Crow. So
I
if
do
there's better options than
agree.
DD Crow, I'm not playing DD Crow.
I feel the same. I've actually said this in videos past. Like DD Crow is just one of those cards where you feel like it's not that great, but like, do you have the what to actually cut it from the sideboard? And I feel obviously you have, and I've been on the fence with it too because nowadays like Hero Beat, sure you can DD Crow some of the Miracle Fusion targets, but that deck is like out of control good right now, and like everybody's on it. And
Yeah,
if they have multiple heroes and or waters, then like Crow's useless. So it's not that
absolutely.
great against that. Like it's probably best against zombies, but even then, like sure you can stop a play, but it's not that great against Vayu because, like you said, you can hit you can hit the Vayu specifically, but um, it doesn't stop both pieces of it, so they can still somewhat play. I don't know. I just feel like the card is probably not as impactful as it once was, and I do think that maybe people will start cutting it down. It's already went from like 3 to 2 to a lot of side decks now,
Yeah.
so we'll see.
Yeah, but zombie is the only card that I feel like it's worth playing versus, and I feel like I have a decent enough matchup versus zombies with 2 oppression, 1 DDV, 2 Thunder King. So if I'm only citing it for one matchup, then I probably just don't want it at all. So
Makes sense. And I think maybe we're kind of finishing up here in terms of questions. What about Royal Oppression here? What do you feel is the right number in the main board? Because I know the person who got second place, who's on your team, Diego, same
mhm,
exact list aside from the fact that he was playing one Royal Oppression and you're on two. So can you speak on that for us?
absolutely. So in you want to bring 1 to 2 depending on what you think you're going to be facing. So in these BCS tournaments, I'm noticing that there's a lot more, I guess, rogue special summon heavy decks. Like we had Flamvel Zombies top one of your events. We had Snack in the finals versus me. She played some sort of a Synchro Cat versus me. So basically, those types of explosive combo decks is you see more of that in BCS tournaments. Whereas in big tournaments like RBETs or even what's it called, Deck Devastator tournaments, it's a lot more Blackwing, a lot more Hero Beat, a lot more Vayu. So I personally would bring 1 oppression, 1 dust, or yeah, 1 oppression and 2 dust. Right, my bad. To one of the larger tournaments. To a small tournament like this, I would bring 2 oppression. Or if I feel like I've seen the local scene and it's a bunch of frogs, a bunch of stuff weak to oppression. Yeah, basically it depends on whatever you think you're going to be facing.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think that because a lot of our when we talk, it's more or less focused on these big online tournaments because that's pretty much what sets the meta for like everywhere, right? Because
Yeah,
everyone's using the online decks that they're seeing, they're copying them, and they're playing them at their local scene. So I feel like if we're signing up for an RBT, that the right number probably
yeah.
is one oppression. Um,
Absolutely, yeah. I brought one to the one, or every tournament I played, I've only brought one. I'm pretty sure. So
Good,
big tournaments, big tournaments.
big turn. Anything else that you'd like to speak on your deck and or give some advice to some of the value players?
Let's see. One of the questions I got this morning was, how do I know when to use plague? I would say be very careful with using your plague. Let's see. There was a scenario where an opponent had, 0 backrows accounted for, and they were saying, "Oh, do I make Stardust or Thought Ruler here?" The answer is you don't know. You don't want to coin flip, and you shouldn't be making any synchro because if 2 bottomless, Mirror Force is unaccounted for, that's 3 cards that start as counters, and 3 prison is unaccounted for. It's a complete coin flip. You don't know at all. So don't be using Plague if you don't have enough information. And besides that, I guess shout out to 10 Fit Ducks, my team. All of you are lovely, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's it. All right. So at this point, I will, in closing, say obviously, please like, comment, and subscribe if you guys haven't already. If you like this content, we'll try to get some more interviews out. Definitely can have 10 Foot back on the channel again. I may be featured on his channel. And again, subscribe to 10 Foot D. That's his channel. I'll have it linked. And with that said, I'll see you all on the
Subscribe to
next
Beast
one.
Mode.
I'll subscribe to Beast Mode. There you go. I'll see you all on the next one.